Hello everybody, and welcome again to my channel. Here you see Spike the Elder Bear sitting in front of outlines for public talks of Jehovah's Witnesses. These are some outlines I had kicking around from the days when I served as an elder. Now today what I wanted to talk about in this video is something that was raised to me by a friend, which I never had truly considered. And I don't think they intended for me to think about this the way I did, but the very fact that it came up the way it did caused me to think about it. So, the situation was somebody asked me what an honest elder would tell them in a certain situation. And I sat there and I thought to myself for a minute, what would an honest elder say? And the question was about judicial committee procedures. And it occurred to me that that question was irrelevant because there's no such thing as an honest elder. So let me qualify this. I am not saying that the individuals themselves that serve as elders are all dishonest. What I am saying, though, is that the organization that trains the elders trains them to be dishonest. But this is not true of just the elders. This is actually true of all of Jehovah's Witnesses. Think back to times when you went out in field service. If you knocked on somebody's door and they came to their door and they asked, "Are you here to convert me?" what would you say? You would probably say, "Oh no, we were here to share just scriptural encouragement, that's all." Something along those lines. What you said could have been different, but you would have denied the fact that you were there as one of Jehovah's Witnesses to convert them. But we know this is not true. The sole reason that Jehovah's Witnesses knock on doors is to attempt to convert people to the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. So the second they answer that person and say that, "No, we're not here to convert you," they are not being honest. However, they are taught to respond that way, and they're taught that that's the good thing, and they're taught this by none other than God's organization. So the average Jehovah's Witness believes in this scenario that when they're being dishonest, they're serving God. So that belief allows them to think that they're actually being honest. Now, many of us who have left the Watchtower, we struggle with the incredibly unfair situations we found ourselves in. Those of us who have been in judicial committees or who have had significant others in judicial committees understand just how unfair these situations can be. And we try to look back and we try to put some semblance of rationality to it and some semblance of human fairness, but it's not possible to do that. The situation was not fair from the get-go. There's nothing that's designed to be fair about being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The whole system is set up to be unfair. And I would contend that even the governing body are currently slaves to the organization. Things have been set in motion from long ago, literally from the days of Charles Taze Russell, but more concretely so from the days of Joseph Rutherford, and locked in stone since the days of Fred Franz. Was this organization, this monstrosity, God's organization? Once the concept of God's organization came to fruition, which happened in the days of Rutherford, on some level or another, all those who were caught up in that web became a slave of that organization, including the leaders. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, all of a sudden, you have these individuals that think they're defending God's organization. So God's organization can't be wrong. So when it becomes blatantly obvious that God's organization was wrong, well, all of a sudden we have to whitewash the past. We have to change it. We have to make it so that God's organization wasn't wrong, because defending that organization is equivalent to defending God himself. So that whole thing is what allows people to become the dishonest servants of an organization, which has never been what it claims to be. So when I'm asked a question, what would an honest elder do in this situation? My response has to be, the honest elder would walk away from the organization and discontinue being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. The most honest thing any elder can ever possibly do is to stop being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. We all know, though, the vast majority of elders won't do this. And I don't think this is because as individuals they're dishonest. They believe they're doing the right thing. They believe they're honest. But they've been trained by that corporation. So I'm making this video because this is a thought that hadn't quite occurred to me in this way before, and it really struck me as interesting. But part of this too is that a lot of us who have left, we struggle with what's been done to us. And part of it is the realization that there was nothing that was honest or fair or righteous about the organization. There was no attempt at honesty or fairness or righteousness on the part of the organization. And that organization is no longer represented by any one particular individual, but rather it has become its own living entity, which now destroys lives at its will, including those who are trapped inside. So, I'm not making this video because I doubt the honesty of any particular person or any group of people that are trapped in that organization, but I'm making this video because I don't believe it is possible to be honest when you are in that organization, because you have a culture of dishonesty. You have magazines which are printed with misquotes on purpose. It is extremely easy to find instances where the Watchtower has misquoted their sources on purpose, knowingly so. Individuals who they have misquoted have written letters to the organization demanding an apology and a retraction. The only thing that ever happens is they might change the wording of the literature, but they never, ever, to my knowledge, issue apologies. Because the organization makes them comfortable with dishonesty. They think that it's okay. The ends justify the means. So that's what allows the individuals who are engaging in the dishonest practices to think that it's okay to do what they're doing. And in fact, to a large extent, being a member of the organization has in fact shut off their thinking ability. And just an aside, I read the article on JW Survey about the recent court case in Pennsylvania. Fessler was the party. And the person that represented the Watchtower was Thomas Jefferson, a really interesting name, one that you don't forget, especially not from the United States. And I didn't forget this name. I remember this name because Thomas Jefferson handled one of the sessions at my elder school in Patterson, Bethel. And I remember that session vividly. Thomas Jefferson was in a very high position of responsibility. He came in a position at the time that was above district overseers. District overseers ran the school, but he came in a position superior to them. If you know the way the organization runs, or ran back then, because district overseers no longer exist, you know that to be above a district overseer, you've got to be pretty high up. You've got to know what's going on. And it stood out in my mind because the way he ran his session, he treated all of the elders like they were little kids. It was unbelievable. I sat there watching, not being able to believe that we're being treated that way. And then when the session was over, the elders around me talked about how great the session was, how great of a teacher Thomas Jefferson was. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe my attitude is just wrong. But no, this was just one of the aspects of the cult of trying to make its members like children. And I saw that delivered in person, face to face, by this Thomas Jefferson. This individual that, by the accounts I've read, had an extremely difficult time knowing how the organization ran. So I'm putting that into context because this whole video is about the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are trained to be dishonest by their organization. And the higher up the organizational chain you get, the more likely you are to be extremely dishonest. And again, I want to reiterate the fact that this is not aimed at any particular individual. Even Thomas Jefferson may believe he's doing the right thing. In fact, I believe he does. I had no reason to believe he was a bad individual. Nor will I advocate thinking he's a bad individual. I do, however, think he's a thoroughly indoctrinated individual under strong mind control. And that mind control is what allows him to be as dishonest as he apparently was, according to the reports that I read. So the next time somebody asks you what an honest Jehovah's Witness would say in a certain situation, you can tell them, the honest Jehovah's Witness would walk away from the organization.